Look at your grocery receipt. No, really. Look at it. The $8 eggs, the $15 ground beef. Now look at your utility bill. You think that's just inflation? You think Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve just made a cute little math error, printed too much money during a pandemic? And now they're trying their hardest to fix it. Stop lying to yourself. Your empty wallet isn't an economic accident. It is a highly engineered, state-sponsored extraction. Every time you wince at the checkout counter, every time you put a basic grocery run on a credit card with a 24% interest rate, you're paying the invisible tax required to keep an American aircraft carrier floating in the South China Sea. You aren't a consumer anymore. You are collateral. Welcome to the War for Dollar survival regime. For 50 years, the American empire survived on one simple, unspoken rule: the rest of the world must buy their energy in US dollar. We don't export enough physical goods to justify the sheer gravity of our currency. We export the petrodollar. If a foreign nation wants oil, they need greenbacks. To get greenbacks, they send us real goods, and in return, we hand them paper. But they can't just hoard that paper under a mattress. They are mathematically forced to reinvest those dollars into U.S. Treasuries. That foreign capital buys our debt, which directly funds the Pentagon and covers up our massive, gaping federal deficit. It's a brilliant, airtight loop, an infinite money glitch for an empire. But the world is rebelling. Nations are trying to bypass the dollar. And when the dollar loses its monopoly on global energy, the entire American financial system faces an overnight, catastrophic collapse. So, the system needs a sacrificial lamb to keep the machine running. Guess who they chose? I used to think this was a fringe theory. Honestly, I did. I thought people talking about the petrodollar and military-industrial overlap were just guys in tinfoil hats hoarding gold in their basements. But then you actually look at the Treasury reports. You follow the money. And the math makes you sick to your stomach. When foreign nations stop buying our debt, the Federal Reserve has to step in as the buyer of last resort. They print the difference to fund the machine. Right now, the U.S. government is adding $1 trillion to the national debt every 100 days. Just the interest payments on that debt recently crossed $1.1 trillion a year. Let that sink in. We are now paying more just in interest to service the national debt than we spend on the entire Department of Defense. And where does that printed money go? It floods the system, deliberately devaluing the cash in your savings account. But the extraction doesn't stop there. As engineered inflation crushes you, the Fed raises interest rates to cool the economy. Mortgage rates skyrocket. Suddenly, you can't afford a house. But Wall Street doesn't need a mortgage. Institutional investors use the backdoor liquidity the Fed provides to buy up distressed single-family homes in your neighborhood in cash. In some major markets, they have swallowed up over 20% of the single-family rental supply. They literally price you out of the neighborhood and then rent the American dream back to you at a premium. Go ahead, defend the Fed in the comments. Tell me I just don't understand macroeconomics. Tell me inflation is a global supply chain issue. But explain to me why since 2020 real inflation-adjusted wages for the bottom 50% of Americans have plummeted while the top 5 defense contractors, Lockheed, RTX, General Dynamics, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman, pulled in over $770 billion in Pentagon contracts in just 4 years. Lockheed Martin alone is sitting on a record backlog of nearly $200 billion. Explain why military and energy giants are swimming in unprecedented cash while you're cutting back on meals. They aren't beating inflation. They are eating your wealth. Part of me wants to blame the guy sitting in the Oval Office. We all do. It's human nature to pick a side, red or blue, and scream at the other half of the country on social media. But look at the data. Presidents don't run this machine. The machine runs them. If you still think voting for a different politician is going to stop the wealth transfer and save your 401k, you are the exact mark this system was designed to exploit. They want you arguing over culture wars while they quietly liquidate your purchasing power to fund proxy wars. Because war and the threat of global instability is the only thing keeping the dollar relevant. Fear drives dollar hoarding. When geopolitics gets bloody, global capital runs in a panic to the so-called safety of the US dollar. The system literally requires the world to be on fire so your money has value. I spent weeks running these numbers, staring at the correlation between Pentagon spending, the Fed's balance sheet expansions, and middle-class wage decay. I wanted to find a flaw in the data. I really wanted to be wrong. Because if I'm right, it means our entire domestic economic stability is built on a protection racket. But there is no flaw in the math. The middle class has been forcefully transitioned from being the engine of consumer capitalism into the raw fuel for a dying imperial machine. And here is the reality that no financial advisor will ever tell you: this isn't a temporary rough patch. This isn't a cycle you can wait out. This is the new permanent state. If the petrodollar system survives, you will continue to bleed out slowly through engineered inflation to pay for the empire. But if the petrodollar system breaks and foreign nations dump their tens of trillions of US debt back onto our shores, the inflation you are crying about today will look like a golden age. You are trapped in a burning building, and the people holding the fire extinguishers are the exact same ones selling the gasoline. The question isn't when things will go back to normal. The question is, how much of your life are you willing to let them harvest before you realize the game is rigged?